In July 2010, an undercover cop posing as a busboy at a birthday party cleared a table. He took a paper cup, a napkin, and a half-eaten slice of pizza. That single crust of bread would solve a mystery that had haunted Los Angeles for 25 years. But to understand the pizza, we have to go back to where it all started. August 10th, 1985, South Central Los Angeles. Late morning. A sanitation worker makes his rounds through the alleys near West Gage Avenue. These alleys are filled with the usual debris, broken furniture, discarded mattresses, piles of garbage that never seem to get smaller no matter how often they are cleared. But today something is different. Among the trash lies a body, a young black woman. She is wearing jeans and a blouse. She has been shot 3 times in the chest. She has been discarded here, left among the garbage, as if she were nothing. Her name was Deborah Jackson. She was 29 years old. She worked as a cocktail waitress at a club in the city. She was a single mother raising 3 children. She had hopes. She had dreams. She had people who loved her. The night before, Deborah left a friend's house in Linwood. She was going to catch a bus home to her apartment in South Central. She never made it. Somewhere between her friend's door and that bus stop, she encountered a man who would change everything. A man who saw her not as a person but as prey. Police arrive at the scene. They take photographs. They mark the position of shell casings. They canvass the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking if anyone saw anything, heard anything. No one did. Or no one is willing to say. The detectives write their reports. They file them away. Another homicide in South Central Los Angeles. Another young black woman found dead. Another case that will likely go cold. Because this is 1985. The crack cocaine epidemic is ravaging these neighborhoods. Violence is rampant. Bodies turn up in alleys with disturbing regularity. The police are overwhelmed. Resources are stretched thin. And the uncomfortable truth is that some victims get more attention than others. Deborah Jackson's case goes cold. Her children grow up without their mother. Her friends mourn her. Her family waits for answers that never come. But Deborah Jackson was not a random victim of random violence. She was the first confirmed kill of a serial murderer who would terrorize the women of South Los Angeles for the next 22 years. A killer who would claim at least 10 lives. A killer who would take trophies. A killer who the police would fail to catch for over 2 decades despite having his DNA, his ballistic signature, and a living eyewitness. A killer who became known as the Grim Sleeper. This is the story of how he was finally brought to justice, of the women he destroyed, of the community that fought for them, and of the survivor who helped put him away. Before we continue, I want to say thank you for taking the time to hear this story. This is a true case, based on court records, news reports, and official statements. The victims in this story were real people with real families who deserve to be remembered, not as statistics, not as case numbers, but as human beings. If you are comfortable, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Now let me tell you what happened in South Central Los Angeles. The neighborhood. To understand the Grim Sleeper case, you have to understand South Central Los Angeles in the 1980s. This was a community under siege. The crack cocaine epidemic had hit these neighborhoods like a bomb. Addiction tore families apart. Violence exploded. Gang activity surged. And the police response was often more occupation than protection. The residents of South Central were predominantly black and brown, working class, many struggling with poverty. The kind of neighborhood where politicians made promises during election season and then forgot about until the next campaign. When women started turning up dead in alleys, it barely made the news. The victims were not wealthy. They were not connected. Some struggled with addiction. Some had turned to the streets to survive, and so they were dismissed. This attitude would allow a serial killer to operate virtually undetected for more than 2 decades. But not everyone was willing to look away. Margaret Prescott was a community activist and radio host. By 1985, she had noticed a disturbing pattern. Black women were being murdered at an alarming rate in South Los Angeles. Their bodies were being dumped in alleys and bushes, mostly along Western Avenue. Prescott did what the police seemed unwilling to do. She started connecting the dots. She founded the Black Coalition Fighting Back Serial Murders. She held community meetings. She put up flyers. She demanded that police investigate properly and warn the community. We had to scream and fight just to get them to acknowledge what was happening, Prescott would later recall. The police held a press conference in September 1985. They acknowledged that a serial killer might be operating in the area. They gave him a name, the Southside Slayer. But the investigation went nowhere. The killings continued, and the community was left to protect itself. The pattern: 1 year after Deborah Jackson's body was found, another victim appeared. August 12, 1986. An alley near the 2500 block of West Vernon Avenue in Hyde Park. Her name was Henrietta Wright. She was 35 years old, a mother of 5 children. Her youngest was only 4 years old when she was murdered. Henrietta had been shot twice in the chest. Her body was found covered with a discarded mattress. Someone had gagged her. The crime scene suggested she may have been killed elsewhere and then dumped in the alley. When ballistics came back, detectives made a crucial discovery. The .25 caliber bullets that killed Henrietta Wright matched the bullets that killed Deborah Jackson a year earlier. Same gun, same killer. The police now had confirmation. They were dealing with a serial murderer, but they did not tell the public. The killings accelerated. January 10th, 1987. Barbara Ware, 23 years old, found under a pile of trash and debris in an alley. Shot once in the chest with a .25 caliber weapon. That same night, police received a strange phone call. An anonymous tipster reported seeing someone dump a body in the alley. He provided a license plate number for the van the perpetrator was driving. Detectives traced the plate to a church. The keys to that van were easily accessible to almost anyone who visited. A dead end. But something else bothered investigators. How did the caller know the victim was a woman in a dark alley? How did he see the license plate clearly enough to report it? Some wondered if the killer himself had made the call. April 15th, 1987. Bernita Sparks, 26 years old. She told her mother she was going to the store for cigarettes. A simple errand. A 5-minute walk. She kissed her mother goodbye and stepped out the door. She never came back. Her body was found the next day in a trash bin on Western Avenue, shot in the chest. Garbage had been piled on top of her body. Same gun. October 31st, 1987. Mary Lowe, 26 years old, found in an alley, shot in the chest. Same gun. January 30th, 1988. Lacrica Jefferson, 22 years old, found in an alley with 2 gunshot wounds to the chest. A napkin had been draped over her face. On it, the killer had written one word in pen: AIDS. A message, a taunt, a sign of the contempt he felt for his victims. Same gun. September 11th, 1988. Alicia Alexander, just 18 years old, barely an adult, found in an alley, shot in the chest. Same gun. 7 women in 3 years, all black, all found in alleys in South Central Los Angeles, all shot with the same .25 caliber handgun, all violated before death, all discarded like garbage. And still the police did not warn the community. The survivor. November 19th, 1988, early evening. Enietra Washington was a 30-year-old mother of 2. She had lived in South Los Angeles her entire life. She knew these streets. She knew the dangers. She was careful. That evening, she was walking to her friend's house. They were going to get ready for a party together. She was looking forward to a good time. As she walked, she noticed a parked car, an orange Ford Pinto. But this was not just any Pinto. This one had been customized. Racing stripes, chrome rims, high-end tires. It reminded me of Hot Wheels, she would later testify in court. The little miniature cars my kids used to have. The driver noticed her looking at his car. "Hey, where you going?" Washington ignored him. She kept walking. The Pinto pulled up alongside her. The driver said something else. Washington stopped. "I told him you can't holler at me through car windows. You have to get out and talk to me." The man got out. He was short, early 30s, neatly dressed in khakis and a button-up shirt, clean cut, not threatening at first glance. He asked where she was going, what she was doing. Washington told him she did not need a ride. She was fine, but he kept insisting. "That's what's wrong with you black women," he said. "People can't be nice to you." Something about his words made Washington feel guilty. She thought she had been rude. She thought she had judged him unfairly. She changed her mind. "Okay," she said. "I guess you can give me a ride." It was almost the last decision she ever made. They drove through South Los Angeles. The man seemed friendly at first. They made small talk. He said his name was Lonnie. Then he made a stop at a house. Said it belonged to his uncle. He needed to pick up some money. He would be right back. He went to the front door, spoke to someone, returned to the car 10 minutes later. But something had changed. He was different now, agitated. He accused Washington of dogging him, called her by another woman's name. His demeanor had shifted completely. Washington felt uneasy. Something was wrong. She wanted to get out of the car. Then everything went quiet. Washington felt something warm spreading across her chest. She looked down. She had been shot. She did not even hear the gunfire. "Why did you shoot me?" she asked. His only response was that she had disrespected him. Washington began to plead. She told him she had children, 2 kids who needed their mother. She begged him to take her to a hospital. "If you take my life and don't provide for my kids," she told him, "I will haunt you." He refused. Washington faded in and out of consciousness. She was violated. She woke to a bright flash. He was taking a Polaroid photograph of her, a trophy. Then he pushed her out of the car and drove away. Anitra Washington lay wounded on the street. She should have been dead. She had been shot in the chest, at close range. But somehow, she found the strength to move. She got up, stumbling, barely conscious. She made her way to a friend's house nearby. Someone called an ambulance. At the hospital, doctors removed the bullet from her chest. They discovered something remarkable. The bullet had struck her ribs and sternum. Instead of penetrating her vital organs, it had been deflected. It missed her heart, missed her lungs, missed everything that would have killed her. Anitra Washington survived. She spent 3 weeks in the hospital recovering. When police came to interview her, she told them everything she could remember. The orange Pinto, the man named Lonnie, his height, his appearance, his demeanor. The bullet was tested. It matched the .25 caliber handgun used in all 7 previous murders. Police knew their serial killer had a survivor. They had a physical description. They had his car. They had a living witness. But they did not tell Anitra Washington that she had survived an attack by a serial killer. They did not warn the public. Washington would not learn the truth about what happened to her for 18 years. The silence. After the attack on Anitra Washington, the killings appeared to stop. No new victims were publicly linked to the .25 caliber handgun. The case went cold. Detectives were reassigned to other investigations. The files gathered dust. For 14 years, there was silence. Police assumed the killer had either died, been imprisoned for an unrelated crime, or simply decided to stop. Serial killers rarely stop on their own, but sometimes they do. The families of the victims were never told that their daughters and sisters had been murdered by a serial killer. The community was never warned that he might still be out there. Life went on. Meanwhile, somewhere in South Los Angeles, a man named Lonnie David Franklin Jr. was living his life. He had married a woman named Sylvia in 1986. They had 2 children together. He worked as a garage attendant for the Los Angeles Police Department for a time. Later, he became a sanitation worker for the city. On weekends, he worked on cars in his driveway. Neighbors knew him as a friendly guy, always willing to help with a repair, always ready with a wave and a hello. Everyone wanted to work for Lonnie, one neighbor would later say. He fixed their cars, loaned them money when they were short, helped out with odd jobs. Just a regular family man, a pillar of the community, the last person anyone would suspect. The return. March 19, 2002. 14 years after Anitra Washington was attacked, a body was found in an alley in Inglewood. A teenage girl, strangled and beaten, left in the shrubs, and her name was Princess Berthomeu. She was 15 years old. Princess had lived a difficult life. She had suffered abuse. She had been placed in foster care. Her foster sister Samara Herard said Princess became like my daughter after joining their family. But when Herard's mother died, the foster care system moved Princess to a different home, a home in South Los Angeles, far from everyone who loved her. She was a private schoolgirl who always had her own room with a walk-in closet and the best of everything, Herard later said. And they put her in the heart of the hood. Princess ran away. Months later, she was dead. She was just 15 years old. She never got a chance to live her life. July 11, 2003. Another body, Valerie McCorvey, 35 years old, found in an alley. January 1st, 2007, New Year's Day, Janicia Peters, 25 years old, shot to death. Her body was placed inside a trash bag. Then the bag was stuffed inside a dumpster, discarded, like garbage, just like all the others. DNA evidence from the 2003 and 2007 murders was tested against cold case databases. The results came back. Perfect match. The same DNA profile found at the murders in the 1980s. The grim sleeper had returned. Or perhaps he had never stopped at all. The investigation. In 2007, the LAPD quietly formed a special task force. They called it the 800 Task Force. 6 detectives, complete secrecy. Their mission was to find the serial killer who had been murdering women in South Los Angeles for over 2 decades. But even with a task force, the LAPD did not tell the public what they were doing. They did not warn the community that a serial killer was active again. It was not until 2008 that journalist Christine Pelisek broke the story in LA Weekly. She was the one who gave the killer his name, the Grim Sleeper. She called him that because of the 14-year gap between the murders in the late 80s and the murders in the 2000s. It appeared he had taken a long sleep, but many investigators now believe there was no real gap at all. They believe Franklin killed throughout those 14 years. They just never found the bodies. As a sanitation worker, Franklin had access to landfills. He knew how to make things disappear. After Pelisek's story broke, the community finally learned the truth. A serial killer had been hunting black women in their neighborhood for over 20 years, and the police had kept it secret. The outrage was immense, but the killer remained unknown. The pizza. Police had DNA from the crime scenes. They ran it through California's criminal DNA database. Every convicted felon in the state had their profile on file. No exact match. The killer had never been convicted of a felony in California, or if he had, it was before DNA collection became standard. Then detectives tried something revolutionary: familial DNA searching. Instead of looking for an exact match, they searched for partial matches. DNA profiles that were similar enough to suggest a family member, a brother, a son, a father. In 2008, a man named Christopher Franklin was arrested on a felony weapons charge. His DNA was taken and entered into the database. The system flagged a partial match to the Grim Sleeper crime scenes. Christopher Franklin was too young to have committed the murders in the 80s, but his father was not. Detectives began investigating Lonnie David Franklin Jr. They pulled his records. They found his prior conviction. In 1974, while stationed with the army in West Germany, Franklin and 2 other soldiers had attacked a 17-year-old girl. They spent an entire night brutalizing her. They took photographs. The victim survived. She was smart. She asked Franklin for his phone number, pretending to be interested in him. Police used that number to track him down. Franklin was convicted and served 3 years in a German prison. He was given a dishonorable discharge from the army. Then he came home to Los Angeles and started killing. The detectives now had their suspect, but they needed his DNA to confirm. They put Franklin under surveillance, watched his every move, waited for an opportunity. In July 2010, Franklin attended a birthday party at a restaurant in Los Angeles. An undercover police officer got a job at the restaurant. He pretended to be a busboy. When Franklin finished eating, the officer collected everything he could find: plates, cups, napkins, and a partially eaten slice of pizza. The DNA from the pizza crust was tested. It matched the DNA from the crime scenes. Perfect match. 25 years after he killed Deborah Jackson, the Grim Sleeper had finally been identified. On July 7th, 2010, police arrived at Lonnie Franklin's home in South Los Angeles. The friendly neighbor, the family man, the mechanic who fixed everyone's cars. They arrested him for the murders of 10 women. He was 57 years old. He had been hiding in plain sight for a quarter century. The search. When detectives searched Franklin's home and garage, they found evidence of a predator. Hundreds of photographs, nearly 1,000 pictures of women, black women, some unconscious, some appeared to be deceased. Police believe Franklin took many of the pictures himself, trophies of his crimes, evidence of violence that stretched back decades. They also found the .25 caliber handgun that had killed Janisha Peters. Ballistics confirmed it was the same weapon used in earlier murders. And they found identification cards belonging to victims. More trophies. Police released 180 photographs to the public, hoping to identify the women in the pictures. These people are not suspects, Police Chief Charlie Beck said at a press conference. We don't even know if they are victims. But we do know this. Lonnie Franklin's reign of terror in the city of Los Angeles, which spanned well over 2 decades, certainly needs to be investigated further. Some of the women in the photographs came forward. They were alive. They had met Franklin years ago. They had no idea what he was. Others remain unidentified to this day. Investigators believe Franklin may have killed far more than 10 women. Estimates range from 25 to over 100 victims. We certainly don't believe we are so lucky or so good as to know all of his victims, Chief Beck said. The trial, Lonnie Franklin's trial, began in February 2016. Nearly 6 years after his arrest, delays and legal motions had stretched the process out. Prosecutor Beth Silverman told the jury that Franklin was a methodical predator who targeted vulnerable women. I don't think anything was by chance, Silverman said. I think he went looking for them. More than 50 witnesses testified over the course of the 3-month trial. DNA experts explained the genetic evidence linking Franklin to the murders. Ballistics experts connected the killings to the same weapon. Family members of the victims shared their pain, and Anitra Washington took the stand. 27 years after she was shot and left for dead, Washington faced the man who tried to kill her. When shown a photograph of Franklin from 1989, she identified him immediately. That's him, she said. 100% certain. She noted that he looked the same, but with less hair now. Washington described that night in November 1988 in vivid detail. The orange Pinto, the friendly stranger, the stop at his uncle's house, the sudden gunshot. The next thing I knew, she testified, I felt something warm on my chest. I asked him why he shot me. He said I disrespected him. She described pleading for her life, begging him to take her to a hospital, telling him about her children. She described being violated, the flash of the Polaroid camera, and then being pushed out of the car and left to die. In Franklin's possession, police had found that Polaroid, a photograph of Washington, wounded and victimized. He had kept it for 22 years. Franklin sat silent throughout the trial. He never testified in his own defense. His lawyers presented little evidence on his behalf. He showed no emotion as witnesses described his crimes. On May 5, 2016, after just 1.5 days of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. Guilty on all counts. 10 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, special circumstances of multiple murders. Franklin was now eligible for the death penalty. The sentence, August 10, 2016. Exactly 31 years to the day after Deborah Jackson's body was found in that South Central alley, Lonnie David Franklin Jr. stood before Judge Kathleen Kennedy for sentencing. Before the judge spoke, the families of the victims had their chance to address Franklin. One by one, they stood. They looked at the man who had taken their loved ones, and they spoke. Rochelle Johnson, daughter of Henrietta Wright, told the court she was 4 years old when her mother was murdered. She remembered nothing of her mother, only photographs, only stories. If she only could have seen the evil in that man, Johnson said, she wouldn't be there. Her brother Willie Bush told the court he collapsed when he learned his mother had been killed. I just wish that she could still have been here on this earth, he said. Samara Herard spoke about Princess Berthomew, the 15-year-old foster child who became like a daughter to her. She didn't get a chance to live her life, Herod said. It seems so unfair. Why her? I couldn't have asked for a better sister. Ever. Then Anitra Washington stepped forward. She faced the man who had shot her, attacked her, photographed her, left her to die. You are truly a piece of evil, she said. You're right up there with Manson. She told him she had lived in fear since that night, in 1988. That she still felt the terror, that it never went away. You deserve no forgiveness, she said, because you have shown no remorse. Vivian Williams, sister of victim Georgia May Thomas, stood last. You've done some horrible things, she told Franklin. You've walked into this room and looked straight ahead like you think you're God. She paused, The courtroom was silent. "I forgive you," she said, "because that's what the Bible teaches." Judge Kennedy addressed Franklin. "I can't think of anyone I've encountered in all my years in the criminal justice system that has committed the monstrous crimes that you have." She sentenced him to death for each of the 10 murders. The end. Lonnie David Franklin Jr. was transferred to San Quentin State Prison to await execution. But California had not executed anyone since 2006. Legal challenges to the death penalty meant that the state's death row had become, in practice, a life sentence. Franklin would likely die of old age before facing the needle. On March 28, 2020, prison guards found Franklin unresponsive in his cell. He was pronounced dead at 7:43 in the evening. He was 67 years old. The cause of death was never publicly revealed. There were no signs of trauma. Prison officials said only that it appeared to be natural causes. Lonnie Franklin died without ever confessing to his crimes, without ever revealing how many women he actually killed, without ever telling police where other victims might be buried. He took his secrets to the grave. The legacy. For the families of the victims, Franklin's death brought a measure of closure, but it could not bring back the women he killed. Diana Ware, stepmother of Barbara Ware, spoke after learning of Franklin's death. "I won't say I'm pleased he died," she said, "but at the end there was justice for all the bad things he did in his life. We can now be at peace." Margaret Prescott, the activist who had been fighting for justice since 1985, reflected on what the Grim Sleeper case revealed. "Please stop referring to these victims as prostitutes," she had demanded at Franklin's arrest press conference. "They were women. They were mothers. They were loved by their families and their communities." The case exposed uncomfortable truths about how America treats certain victims. For 25 years, a serial killer hunted black women in South Los Angeles. For most of that time, police did not warn the community, did not prioritize the investigation, did not treat the victims as worthy of the same attention given to victims in wealthier neighborhoods. When Natalie Holloway, a white college student, went missing in Aruba in 2005, the story dominated national news for months. Every network covered it, every newspaper. The world watched. But 10 black women murdered over 2 decades in South Los Angeles barely made the local news. The Black Coalition Fighting Back Serial Killers continues its work to this day. They fight for a permanent memorial to the victims, for compensation for the families, for better conditions in the communities where vulnerable women still live, because the Grim Sleeper is gone. But the conditions that allowed him to kill for 25 years remain. The victims remembered. Deborah Jackson, 29 years old, cocktail waitress, single mother of 3 children. Henrietta Wright, 35 years old, mother of 5 children. Her youngest was 4 when she was killed. Barbara Ware, 23 years old. Bernita Sparks, 26 years old. She went out to buy cigarettes and never came home. Mary Lowe, 26 years old. Lacrica Jefferson, 22 years old. Alicia Alexander, 18 years old, barely an adult. Princess Bertomeu, 15 years old, a foster child who never got a chance. Valerie McCorvey, 35 years old. Genesia Peters, 25 years old, found on New Year's Day. They were daughters. They were sisters. They were mothers. They were human beings. They deserved protection. They deserved justice. They deserved to live. And in Etra, Washington, she survived. She testified against her attacker. She helped put a monster behind bars. She lived to see him sentenced to death. At Franklin's sentencing, she stood before him one final time. "My name is Enietra Margette," she said, "and I'm one of your little pickups." She paused, "but I'm the one that got away." The end.